Sir, the boy lived with me in the orphanage. The maid cried when she saw the portrait in the mansion. Adrian Wallace never imagined that a simple housemaid would change the course of his life forever. It happened on a quiet afternoon in the mansion when Miriam, the new maid, stopped in front of an old portrait hanging in the hallway. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands trembled, and her voice came out at a choked whisper. Sir, that girl lived with me in the orphanage until she was 30 years old. Adrian froze. His breath caught in his throat. The girl in the portrait, little Sophie, was the younger sister he lost nearly 28 years ago, kidnapped as a child and never seen again. His heart pounded. How could this woman recognize the sister his family had long believed to be dead? Before we continue, comment the name of your city, like this video, and subscribe for more emotional stories. The autumn rain fell softly over the Wallace mansion, a 3-story Victorian estate that had stood on the hill overlooking the city for over a century. Adrian Wallace stood at the grand entrance, key in hand, feeling the weight of absence press against his chest. He hadn't been here in 2 years, not since his mother's health began to decline. Now she was gone, and the house felt like a tomb of memories. He pushed open the heavy oak door. The smell of old wood and dust greeted him. Furniture sat covered in white sheets like ghosts waiting to be awakened. Adrian walked slowly through the hallway, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Everything was exactly as he remembered. The crystal chandelier, the Persian rugs, the family portraits lining the walls. Everything except the laughter that once filled these rooms. He made his way to his mother's study, a room she had kept locked for years. Inside, boxes were stacked carefully, labeled in her neat handwriting. Adrian's childhood, wedding photos, Sophie's things. That last box made him pause. Sophie, his little sister, gone for 28 years, taken at age 5 from the garden while their mother was inside making lunch. The investigation had gone cold within months. No ransom, no body, just gone. Adrian sat down heavily in his mother's chair. The grief counselor had told him that his mother never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. Even on her deathbed, she had whispered Sophie's name. He opened the box labeled Sophie's Things. Inside were tiny dresses, a worn teddy bear, drawings in crayon, and at the bottom, a framed portrait. Adrian lifted it carefully. The painting showed Sophie at age 4, sitting on the garden bench beside the fountain, her blonde curls catching the sunlight, her smile bright and innocent. The artist had captured something magical in her eyes, a spark of curiosity and joy. Adrian carried the portrait to the wall and hung it beside the window where the afternoon light would touch it. He stepped back, looking at his sister's face. She would be 33 now. Did she have children? Was she even alive? The questions had haunted him his entire adult life. I'm sorry I couldn't find you, he whispered to the portrait. I'm sorry, Sophie. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Wallace? A woman's voice, hesitant and soft. Adrian turned. Yes, come in. The door opened, and a black woman in her mid-40s entered, wearing a simple gray dress and white apron. She carried cleaning supplies and had kind eyes that seemed to carry their own quiet sadness. This was Maria Watson, the new housekeeper the estate management company had hired to help prepare the mansion for sale. I'm sorry to disturb you, sir. I just wanted to... She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes had found the portrait on the wall. The cleaning supplies slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. Her face went pale, then flushed. Her hands flew to her mouth. Ma'am, are you all right? Adrian stepped forward, concerned. Maria stood frozen, staring at the portrait with wide, disbelieving eyes. Tears began to stream down her face. Her whole body started to tremble. Sir, her voice cracked. Sir, this girl. Adrian's heart began to race. What is it? Maria turned to him, her face a mixture of shock and something that looked like recognition. Painful, impossible recognition. Sir, this girl, she lived with me in the orphanage. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Adrian felt the room tilt. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. What did you say? Maria was crying openly now, her hands shaking as she pointed at the portrait. I know her. I know this face. She lived with me at St. Catherine's Orphanage until she was 13 years old. Adrian thought he had misheard. His mind struggled to process what she was saying. That's impossible. This is my sister. She was kidnapped 28 years ago. She was 5 years old. Maria shook her head, tears falling onto her apron. No, sir, no, I'm telling you the truth. She was there. She was at the orphanage with me. Adrian felt like the floor was falling away beneath him. How can you be sure? Maria took a shaky breath, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Because I grew up beside her, sir. From when I was 8 years old until I was 14. Her name at the orphanage was Sarah Collins. But she always said, Maria's voice broke. She always said her real name was Sophie Wallace. Adrian's legs gave out. He sank into the chair, staring at Maria in disbelief. What? She said she had been taken from a rich family. She said she had a brother named Adrian. She talked about a big house with a garden and a fountain. She said her brother taught her to feed the birds and called her Little Star. Maria's voice was barely a whisper now. No one believed her, sir. They thought it was a child's imagination. They thought she was making up stories to feel special. Adrian's hands were shaking. Little Star. The nickname came rushing back. He had called her that because she loved looking at the stars before bedtime. No one outside the family knew that. No one. But I believed her, Maria continued, her voice stronger now. I believed her because she would cry at night, calling for her brother. Because she drew pictures of a mansion and a fountain over and over. Because when other kids called her a liar, she never changed her story. Never. Aryan stood up abruptly, his mind racing. Where is she now? Where is my sister? Maria's face crumpled with fresh grief. I don't know, sir. She ran away from the orphanage when she was 13. There was a fight with some older girls who bullied her about her fantasy family. After that night, she disappeared. No one ever saw her again. 13, Adrian repeated, his voice hollow. She was alive until 13, just 20 years ago. He looked at Maria with desperate intensity. And you never told anyone? Never contacted the police? Maria's tears came harder. Sir, I was just a child myself, 14 years old when she left. I had no family, no money, no one to help me. By the time I aged out of the orphanage at 18, I tried to look for her, but I didn't know how. I didn't have resources. I didn't even know her real last name for sure until... She gestured at the portrait. Until today. Adrian walked up to the portrait, his vision blurring with tears. He touched the frame with trembling fingers. You're telling me my sister was a few miles away in an orphanage for 8 years? And no one found her? Yes, sir. Maria's voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't help her. Adrian turned to face her. You said she protected you. What did you mean? Maria wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold together under the weight of the memory. I was smaller than the other children. Weaker. Some of them were cruel. Sophie, Sarah, she would stand between me and them. She would hold my hand during storms because I was afraid. She shared her food with me when I was sick. She told me stories about her brother, about how brave he was, how he would come find her one day. Fresh tears rolled down Maria's cheeks. She gave me hope, sir. When I had nothing, she gave me hope. Adrian felt something break inside his chest, a dam of grief and rage and desperate hope all flooding out at once. He walked over to Maria and looked into her eyes. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Every single detail you remember about my sister. Everything. Maria nodded, pulling a handkerchief from her apron pocket, and with it, something small and faded fell to the floor. Adrian bent to pick it up. It was a thin yellow ribbon, worn and frayed. She gave that to me, Maria whispered, the day before she ran away. She tied it in my hair and said, keep this, Maria. It's from my mother's jewelry box. It's real. I've kept it with me ever since. I never forgot her face. Adrian held the ribbon carefully. It was indeed from his mother's collection. He recognized the specific shade of silk, the delicate embroidered edge. His mother had boxes of these ribbons. Sophie must have taken one before she was kidnapped or... No, the timeline was impossible, and yet here was proof in his hands. He looked at Maria with new determination. I need you to help me. I need you to tell me everything about the orphanage, about what happened to her, about where she might have gone. Can you do that? Maria straightened, wiping her eyes. Yes, sir. I will tell you everything I know. I've waited 20 years to tell someone who would believe me. Adrian turned back to the portrait. His little sister's painted eyes seemed to look directly at him, as if she had been waiting all this time for him to finally hear the truth. I'm going to find you, Sophie, he said softly. I promise you, little star. I'm going to bring you home. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the study, something had shifted. The impossible had become possible. And for the first time in 28 years, Adrian Wallace felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. The next morning, Adrian sat in his study surrounded by old newspaper clippings, police reports, and faded photographs. He had barely slept. Maria had stayed late into the night, recounting every memory she had of Sophie, Sarah, as she had been called. The stories painted a picture of a brave, intelligent girl who never stopped believing she would be found. Adrian picked up his phone and dialed. Mr. Chen, I need you to reopen a case. My sister's case. Yes, the kidnapping from 1990. I have new information. I need a full investigative team by this afternoon. Within hours, his mansion's dining room had been transformed into a command center. Private investigators spread documents across the long table. Maria sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded in her lap, the yellow ribbon still tucked in her apron pocket. Mr. Wallace, the lead investigator, a gray-haired man named Robert Chen, addressed him. I've reviewed the original case file. Your sister Sophie disappeared from the garden on June 14th, 1990. No witnesses, no ransom demand, no leads after the first 3 months. The case went cold. Adrian nodded. And Maria says she arrived at St. Catherine's Orphanage as Sarah Collins shortly after that. We need to confirm the dates. Maria spoke up, her voice steadier now. It was summer when she came. I remember because it was hot, and she was wearing a blue dress that was too fancy for the orphanage. The other children teased her about it. Adrian's chest tightened. His mother had dressed Sophie in a blue sundress that morning, the morning she was taken. We need to visit the orphanage, Adrian said. Today. 2 hours later, Adrian's car pulled up in front of a weathered brick building in the older part of the city. St. Catherine's Orphanage stood 3 stories tall, its windows dark, its garden overgrown. A faded sign indicated it had been converted into a community resource center 5 years ago. Maria stood beside Adrian, staring at the building with visible emotion. I haven't been back here since I aged out at 18. I swore I never would. Adrian gently touched her shoulder. You are not alone this time. Inside, they were greeted by a young receptionist who directed them to the archives in the basement. Sister Grace still volunteers here, the woman said. She worked at the orphanage for 40 years. If anyone remembers, she will. They found Sister Grace in a small office surrounded by boxes of old records. She was in her 70s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When Maria entered, the elderly nun's face lit up with recognition. Maria Watson, my goodness, Cha. I haven't seen you in, 25 years? Maria managed a small smile. Hello, Sister Grace. Adrian introduced himself and explained why they had come. Sister Grace's expression grew serious as he showed her the portrait of Sophie. The nun's hand trembled as she took the photograph. Her face went pale. My God, little Sarah, yes, I remember her. Such a sweet child. Always drawing, always talking about her family. Her real name is Sophie Wallace, Adrian said quietly. She's my sister. She was kidnapped in June of 1997. Sister Grace sank into her chair, clearly shaken. Oh, dear Lord, we never knew. We never knew. Adrian leaned forward. Sister, please, I need to know everything. How did she come to be here? The nun removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. She was brought to us by a woman who identified herself as a state social worker. Eleanor Preston, I believe the name was. She had documents, a birth certificate, death certificates for the supposed parents who died in a car accident. The paperwork looked legitimate. What date was this? Adrian asked. Sister Grace stood and began searching through filing cabinets. She pulled out a dusty folder labeled Collins, Sarah, 1997. July 2nd, 1990, she read aloud. Just over 2 weeks after your sister was taken. Adrian felt rage and helplessness surge through him. The dates matched perfectly. The kidnapping, the end of the search intensification. Someone placed her here deliberately. Sister Grace nodded sadly. We were overwhelmed that summer. There was a social crisis, budget cuts, system failures. We had 23 children arrive in a 3-month period. We accepted the paperwork without thorough investigation. I'm ashamed to say it, but we did. Maria spoke quietly. It wasn't your fault, sister. You did the best you could. The nun smiled sadly at Maria, then turned back to Adrian. Sarah, Sophie, was such a bright child. She was obedient, helpful, but always sad. She drew pictures constantly. Houses, gardens, fountains. She talked about a brother named Adrian who would find her someday. Adrian's voice caught. And no one believed her. We thought it was a coping mechanism, a fantasy to deal with trauma. Many orphan children create elaborate stories about their past. Sister Grace's eyes filled with tears. But she was telling the truth. All along, she was telling the truth, and we failed her. Do you have any of her drawings? Adrian asked. Sister Grace nodded slowly. We kept some of the children's artwork. Let me check the old storage room. They followed her down a narrow hallway to a musty room filled with boxes and old furniture. Sister Grace pulled down a cardboard box labeled Children's Art, 1990s. Inside were dozens of drawings, paintings, and crayon sketches. She sorted through them carefully, then stopped. Her hand trembled as she pulled out a sheet of paper protected in a plastic sleeve. She made this before she left. She told me that if anyone ever came looking for her, I should show them this. She said they would know who she was. Adrian took the drawing with shaking hands. It showed a large house with many windows, a detailed garden, and in the center, a fountain with water spraying up. 2 figures stood beside it, a taller boy and a smaller girl holding hands. In the corner, in careful, childish handwriting, were the words, I am Sophie Wallace. One day my brother Adrian will find me. Below that a date, June 1998. I am 6 years old. Adrian couldn't hold back the tears. They fell onto the plastic sleeve, blurring his vision. Maria moved beside him, crying silently. She had seen Sophie draw this exact picture dozens of times. She never forgot, Maria whispered. Even after a year, she never forgot. Adrian looked at Sister Grace. You said before she left. What happened? The nun's face clouded with regret. She ran away when she was 13, July of 2005. There had been an incident with some older girls. They called her a liar, mocked her for her stories about her rich family. One of them tore up one of her drawings. Sophie fought back, something she rarely did. After the fight, we found her room empty the next morning. She had taken nothing but a small bag and her sketchbook. And no one found her? Adrian's voice was strained. We reported it to the police, but Sister Grace hesitated. Runaways from orphanages were common. The police did a cursory search, but she was 13, nearly 14. They assumed she would come back or turn up somewhere. She never did. Adrian turned to Maria. You were still here when this happened? Maria nodded. I was 14. I woke up and her bed was empty. I knew she had left because she couldn't take the pain anymore. I searched for her after I left the orphanage at 18, but I didn't know where to start. I had no money, no connections. Her voice broke. I failed her too. Adrian shook his head firmly. No, you were children. Both of you. The adults failed you. The system failed you. He looked at Sister Grace. Do you have any records of where she might have gone? Any friends she mentioned? Any place she talked about? Sister Grace thought for a moment. She used to talk about finding the fountain. She said if she could just find the fountain, she could find her way home. We thought she meant a symbolic fountain, but now... She meant our fountain, Adrian said quietly. The one in our garden. She was trying to come home. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Maria's quiet weeping. Adrian carefully folded Sophie's drawing and placed it in his jacket pocket, close to his heart. Thank you, Sister Grace. This drawing, it's proof she remembered. proof she was telling the truth. As they prepared to leave, Sister Grace touched Adrian's arm. Mr. Wallace, I pray you find her. I've prayed for that child every day since she left. If there's anything else I can use. Actually, Adrian said, there is. I'm hiring a full investigative team. We'll need access to all records from that time. Visitor logs, staff records, everything. You'll have it, Sister Grace promised. Back in the car, Maria stared out the window as they drove through the city. She was so close, Mr. Wallace. For 8 years, she was just 15 minutes from your home. If only someone had believed her. Adrian's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I'm going to find her, Maria. 20 years have passed since she ran away, but she's out there. I can feel it. His phone rang. It was Robert Chen. Mr. Wallace, we found something. Hospital records from 2010. A Jane Doe admitted to County General, approximately age 18, found unconscious near the highway. She was in a coma for 3 weeks. When she woke up, she gave the name Sarah Wallace. Adrian nearly swerved off the road. What? Where is she now? She stayed in the hospital for 4 months, then disappeared before being discharged. But sir, there's more. The hospital staff kept some of her belongings. Apparently she drew constantly during her recovery. The art therapist saved her work. We're going there now, Adrian said, making a sharp U-turn. Maria grabbed the dashboard. Mr. Wallace. She used her real name, Maria. After all those years, she remembered. She's out there and she's trying to come back. As they sped toward County General Hospital, Adrian felt the pieces beginning to come together. His sister had survived. She had remembered. And somewhere out there, she was still trying to find her way home. The portrait in his study, the drawing from the orphanage, and now hospital records. Each piece was a breadcrumb Sophie had left behind, a trail of hope leading back to the family she had never forgotten. Hold on, little star, Adrian whispered. I'm coming. County General Hospital loomed before them, a sprawling concrete structure that had seen better days. Adrian and Maria hurried through the main entrance, past waiting rooms filled with tired faces, until they reached the administrative wing. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the hospital's head of social services, met them in a cramped office filled with filing cabinets. She was a woman in her late 50s with gray streaks in her dark hair and the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much suffering. Mr. Wallace, she said, shaking his hand. Mr. Chen contacted us about the Jane Doe case from 2010. I was actually the attending psychiatrist during her stay. Adrian leaned forward eagerly. You remember her? I do. She was unusual. Most trauma patients either can't remember or won't speak about their past. But this young woman, she was desperate to tell her story. She said her name was Sarah Wallace, that she had been lost for a very long time, and that she needed to find her family. Why didn't anyone contact us? Adrian's voice was tight with controlled emotion. Dr. Morrison sighed. We tried, Mr. Wallace, but she had no identification, no documents. She gave an address for the Wallace estate, but when social services went there, the property was empty. Your mother had moved to a care facility by then, hadn't she? Adrian closed his eyes. His mother had entered assisted living in late 2009 after a stroke. The mansion had been closed up, maintained by a property service, but essentially abandoned. Yes, she moved in December 2009. The social worker filed a report but couldn't locate any family. The young woman became agitated when told this, saying her brother would be looking for her. But without proper documentation or a way to verify her identity, Dr. Morrison spread her hands helplessly. The system failed her again. What happened to her? Maria asked softly. She stayed for 4 months. Physically, she recovered well. Mentally, she struggled. She had significant memory gaps, likely from childhood trauma and the head injury that brought her here. But she drew constantly. The art therapist said it was her way of processing memories. Dr. Morrison stood and walked to a locked cabinet. We kept her drawings. Something told me they were important. She pulled out a large portfolio and placed it on the desk. Adrian opened it with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of sketches. Each one showed variations of the same scenes. A mansion with many windows, a fountain with water cascading down, 2 children playing, a woman at a piano, a garden with rose bushes. The detail was extraordinary. These weren't childish drawings, but the work of someone with real artistic talent. Maria gasped. She got better. Her drawing, it's beautiful. One sketch in particular caught Adrian's attention. It showed the fountain in precise detail, every tear, every carved stone face, exactly as it existed in reality. In the corner was written, "Home. Where is home?" "These are remarkable," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "She told me once that if she could just draw it clearly enough, she would remember how to get back. She said her brother was looking for her, and she needed to find him before it was too late." Adrian's voice was hoarse. "What do you mean, too late?" "She believed time was running out, that if she didn't find you soon, she would be lost forever. I tried to tell her that wasn't true, but she was convinced." The doctor paused. And then one morning in March 2010, she was gone. She left a note thanking the staff and saying she had to go back to where it all started. "Where it all started," Adrian repeated. "The orphanage." Dr. Morrison nodded. "That would be my guess. We filed a missing person report, but she was an adult. Without evidence of danger to herself or others, the police couldn't do much." Adrian carefully gathered the drawings. "May I take these?" "Yes, I've been hoping someone would come for them." Dr. Morrison handed him the portfolio. "Mr. Wallace, there's one more thing. She mentioned a name several times. Maria? She said Maria would remember her. Maria would know the truth." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "She remembered me. She said you were the only one who believed her, the only one who knew her real name." Dr. Morrison looked at Maria with recognition. "That's you, isn't it?" Maria nodded, unable to speak. The drive back across the city was silent. Adrian's mind raced through the timeline. Sophie had been in the hospital in 2010, 15 years ago. She had gone back to the orphanage. But Sister Grace said no one had seen her. "We need to go back," Adrian said suddenly, "to St. Catherine's. If she went back there, there must be some trace of her." "The building was still operating as an orphanage in 2010, Maria said. "It didn't close until 2020. Adrian called Robert Chen. "I need you to meet us at the old orphanage. Bring tools. We're searching the entire building." They arrived at St. Catherine's as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown garden. Sister Grace met them at the door, surprised by their return. "Mr. Wallace, is everything all right?" "Sister, we have evidence that Sophie came back here in 2010. Did anyone report seeing a young woman, early 20s, asking about the orphanage's past residents?" Sister Grace thought carefully. "Not that I recall, but I wasn't here every day by then. I had semi-retired. Let me check the visitor logs." She led them to the office and pulled out logbooks from 2010. Adrian and Maria scanned the entries. Most were official visits, social workers, maintenance staff, delivery personnel. But one entry caught Maria's eye. "Here," she pointed, "March 18th, 2010. S. Wallace. Reason for visit, personal." Adrian's heart pounded. She was here. She signed her real name. "I don't remember her," Sister Grace said apologetically, "but if she came during the week, I might have been at the downtown office. Many of the staff from that time have moved on or retired." "Can we search the building?" Adrian asked. "Especially the areas where children would have spent time." Sister Grace hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. Let me get the keys." They moved through the darkened building with flashlights. The community center occupied the main floors, but the upper level, the old dormitories, had been closed off, deemed unsafe due to structural concerns. Maria led them up the creaking stairs to the third floor. "This was the girls' dormitory. Sophie and I slept here." The room was bare now, stripped of beds and furniture. Dust covered every surface, but the walls still bore the marks of decades of young inhabitants. Scratches, drawings, names carved into the plaster. Maria walked slowly around the room, her flashlight beam scanning the walls. Adrian and Robert Chen followed, examining every surface. "Here," Maria's voice cracked. She stood before a wall section near what had been her bed. Adrian rushed over. There, partially hidden behind a loose section of wallboard, was writing. Fresh compared to the other marks, done perhaps 15 years ago. The handwriting was shaky but legible. "I came back. No one remembered me. I'm sorry, Maria. I tried to find you. I tried to come home. But home doesn't exist anymore. Where do lost things go?" Sophie, March 2010. Below the message was a sketch, a simple but precise drawing of the fountain in two stick figures holding hands. Maria collapsed against the wall, sobbing. She came looking for me. She came back, and I wasn't here. Adrian knelt beside her, his own eyes burning with tears. She was here, Maria, 15 years ago. She was trying to find her way back to all of us. Robert Chun photographed the wall carefully. Mr. Wallace, this confirms she was actively searching for her family. She knew who she was. We can work with this. Adrian stood, his jaw set with determination. Where would she go from here? If the orphanage was empty of the people she knew, if the mansion was closed, where would a lost person go? She was an artist, Maria said quietly, wiping her eyes. The drawings, they were so beautiful. Maybe she went somewhere she could draw, somewhere she could sell her art. Robert Chen nodded slowly. That's actually a good lead. If she needed money, if she was trying to survive on her own, art would be a logical path. Let me check regional databases for street artists, market vendors, anyone matching her description. 3 days later, Adrian received the call he had been desperately waiting for. Mr. Wallace, we found something, Robert Chen said, his voice tight with excitement. There's a record from the artisan registry in the mountain towns. A woman registered as a vendor 5 years ago. Name, Sophie W. Description matches. She sells children's portraits at weekend markets. Hand-drawn, custom work. Adrian's hands shook. Where? Small town called Hillcrest, about 2 hours north. There's a market there every Saturday. According to the registry, she's been a regular vendor for the past 5 years. That's tomorrow, Adrian said, looking at the calendar. Yes, sir. Adrian found Maria in the kitchen preparing tea. Maria, pack a bag. We're leaving in the morning. She turned to him, hope and fear warring in her expression. You found her? I think so. There's a street artist in the mountains who matches her description. Uses the name Sophie W. Maria's hands flew to her mouth. Oh God, it's really her. We leave at dawn, Adrian said, and Maria, bring the yellow ribbon. She needs to know you never forgot her either. That night, Adrian sat in his study, looking at Sophie's childhood portrait beside the drawings from the hospital. 15 years she had been out there, alone, trying to find her way home. 15 years of survival and hope and art. Tomorrow, little star, he whispered to the portrait. Tomorrow I'm bringing you home. In her small room, Maria held the yellow ribbon, pressing it to her heart. She thought of the brave little girl who had protected her, who had shared her hope, who had never stopped believing. Hold on, Sophie, she whispered into the darkness. We're coming. Outside, a cool wind swept down from the mountains, carrying with it the promise of reunion, or heartbreak. Only tomorrow would tell which. The mountain road wound upward through forests of pine and oak, the morning mist clinging to the valleys below. Adrian drove in focused silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Maria sat beside him, the yellow ribbon clutched in her hands, her lips moving in silent prayer. Hillcrest was a small town nestled between two peaks, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where life moved at the pace of the seasons. The Saturday market filled the town square, colorful stalls selling everything from fresh produce to handmade quilts, the air alive with laughter and the smell of baking bread. Adrian parked at the edge of the square, his heart hammered against his ribs. Somewhere in this crowd was his sister. After 28 years, after decades of searching and grief, she was here. I see her, Maria whispered, her voice breaking. Adrian followed her gaze. At the far end of the square, beneath a large oak tree, a woman sat at a small easel. She wore a simple cream-colored dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose braid. Before her, a young child sat patiently while the woman sketched, her hand moving with practiced grace across the paper. Even from this distance, Adrian could see it, the shape of her face, the way she tilted her head when concentrating, exactly like their mother. His vision blurred with tears. That's her, he breathed. That's Sophie. Maria's legs began to move before her mind could catch up. She walked slowly across the square, weaving between stalls and shoppers, her eyes never leaving the woman. Adrian followed a few steps behind, his entire body trembling. The woman finished the portrait and handed it to the delighted child, accepting payment with a shy smile. As the family walked away, she began arranging her supplies for the next customer. Maria stopped 3 feet away. Sarah? The woman's hands stilled. Slowly, so slowly, she turned. Her eyes, green, like their mother's, widened in disbelief. Recognition flickered across her face like lightning, followed by confusion, then shock. Her voice was soft, hesitant. I know you. Maria's tears fell freely now. Yes, yes, you do. The woman stood, her hand going to her throat. The orphanage. You're from St. Catherine's. You're Maria. Yes, Maria moved closer. Oh God, yes, it's me. It's really me. The woman's face crumpled. She took a stumbling step forward, and then they were embracing, both of them crying, holding each other as if afraid the other would vanish. Maria, the woman sobbed into her shoulder. You're real. You're here. I thought I dreamed you. I thought I made you up. No, I'm real. I'm here, and I never forgot you. Never. Adrian stood frozen, watching the reunion, his throat too tight to speak. The woman, his sister, pulled back from Maria, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself. How did you find me? After all these years, how? She stopped. Her eyes had found Adrian. He stood there in his dark coat, tears streaming down his face, looking at her with an expression of such profound love and grief that it stopped her breath. Sophie, hey, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The woman went pale. She swayed and Maria steadied her. That's not my name. My name is Sarah. Or it was. I don't know anymore. Adrian took a slow step forward, then another. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded drawing, the one from the orphanage, the one that said, I am Sophie Wallace. One day my brother Adrian will find me. You drew this, he said, his voice shaking, when you were 6 years old, at St. Catherine's. You drew our house, our fountain. You drew us. She took the paper with trembling hands. The moment she saw it, something broke open inside her. Her knees buckled, and Adrian caught her, holding her up as she stared at the drawing she had made nearly 30 years ago. I drew this, she whispered. I remember drawing this. The fountain with the 3 tiers, the house with the blue shutters. I dreamed about them my whole life. They're real, Adrian said, his voice breaking. They're real, Sophie. I'm your brother. I'm Adrian. I've been searching for you since the day you were taken. I never stopped. I never gave up. She looked up at him, her green eyes searching his face. Tears fell onto the drawing, smudging the old paper. Adrian, she repeated, the name feeling both foreign and achingly familiar on her tongue. I called for you. In the orphanage, I called for you every night. I know. God, Sophie, I know, and I'm here now. I'm here. She collapsed against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding his sister for the first time in 28 years. Around them, the market continued its bustle, but in that moment, beneath the oak tree, time stood still for 2 people who had been torn apart and were now, finally, reunited. People stopped to stare, but no one interrupted. There was something sacred in the scene, something that transcended curiosity. Maria stood nearby, crying and smiling, her hand pressed over her heart where the yellow ribbon rested in her pocket. After what felt like an eternity, Sophie pulled back slightly, looking between Adrian and Maria. I don't understand. How did you find me? How did you know? The portrait, Maria said gently. Your portrait, in the mansion. I saw it and I recognized you. I told Mr. Wallace, Adrian, that you were at the orphanage, that you were real, that everything you said was true. Sophie's hand went to her mouth. The mansion, is it still there? Yes, Adrian said, and it's waiting for you. The fountain still runs, Sophie. Everything is waiting for you to come home. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I tried to find it. I went back to the orphanage in 2010, after I got out of the hospital. But everything was wrong. The address I remembered didn't make sense. The people I knew were gone. I thought maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe I was crazy, like they said. You weren't crazy, Adrian said firmly. You were stolen from us when you were 5 years old. Someone placed you in that orphanage with false papers and a false identity. But you never forgot who you were. You never stopped trying to find your way home. Sophie looked down at the drawing in her hands, then at the sketches spread across her vendor table, all of them showing variations of the same themes: houses, fountains, gardens, children holding hands. I've been drawing these my whole life, she said quietly. The doctor said it was a coping mechanism, a fantasy to deal with trauma. But they were memories. They were real. They were real, my dear Adrian confirmed, and now you're going to see them again. Not in dreams or drawings, but in person. Will you come home with us, Sophie? She looked at him, then at Maria, her eyes full of hope and fear. What if I don't remember? What if I'm not the sister you remember? Adrian took her hands in his. Then we'll make new memories. We'll rebuild what was stolen from us. But Sophie, you're my sister. Nothing can change that. Not time, not distance, not anything. Maria stepped forward and pulled the yellow ribbon from her pocket. You gave me this, the day before you ran away from the orphanage. You said it was from your mother's jewelry box. You said it was real. Sophie stared at the faded ribbon, and suddenly her eyes filled with a different kind of tears, the tears of recognition. I remember, she whispered. I tied it in your hair. You were crying because the older girls had been mean, and I wanted to give you something beautiful, something that proved I was telling the truth. You were telling the truth, Maria said, pressing the ribbon into Sophie's hand, about everything, and now we're all here, together, the way it should have been all along. The drive back to the city was surreal. Sophie sat in the back seat, clutching the yellow ribbon and the old drawing, staring out the window as if seeing the world for the first time. Maria sat beside her, holding her hand, afraid to let go. Tell me about our mother, Sophie said softly. Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel. She never stopped looking for you. Even at the end, when she was sick, she talked about you. She left a letter. A letter? She made me promise that if I ever found you, I would give it to you. Fresh tears rolled down Sophie's cheeks. She remembered me. She never forgot. Neither of us did. As they crested the final hill and the Wallace mansion came into view, Sophie gasped. There it stood, exactly as she had drawn it 1,000 times. The 3-story Victorian with blue shutters, the wraparound porch, the gardens spreading out on all sides. And in the center of the front garden, the fountain with its 3 tiers, water cascading down in the afternoon sun. I know this place, Sophie breathed. I know it. Adrian parked and they got out slowly. Sophie walked toward the fountain as if in a trance. She reached out and touched the cool water, and suddenly memories flooded back. Playing here with Adrian, feeding the birds, their mother watching from the porch, the day of the blue dress, the garden, the hands that grabbed her. She gasped, stumbling back. Adrian caught her. It's okay. You're safe now. You're home. Inside the mansion, Adrian led Sophie to the study. There, hanging on the wall, was her childhood portrait. She stood before it, looking at the 4-year-old version of herself, and something finally clicked into place. That's me, she said with certainty. I remember sitting for that painting. I remember the artist telling me to hold still. I remember, she turned to Adrian, I remember you giving me your toy bear to hold because I was scared. Adrian smiled through his tears. Mr. Buttons, you named him Mr. Buttons because he had button eyes. Sophie laughed and cried at the same time. Mr. Buttons, I had forgotten that. Adrian opened a desk drawer and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. Before Mother died, she left this for you. Sophie took the letter with shaking hands and carefully opened it. Inside, in her mother's elegant handwriting, were the words, My dearest Sophie. If you are reading this, then miracles do exist and my prayers have been answered. Your brother never stopped searching for you. Neither did I until my last breath. I want you to know that not a single day passed when you were not in my thoughts. The fountain still runs because you love the sound of the water. The garden still blooms because you love the roses. And the piano still sits in the music room, waiting for you to learn the lullaby I used to sing. You were stolen from us, but love cannot be stolen. It waits, patient and eternal, for the day when we are reunited. If not in this life, then in the next. Welcome home, my little star. Welcome home with all my love, mother. Sophie couldn't read the last lines through her tears. Maria wrapped an arm around her while Adrian stood close, his hand on her shoulder. She called me little star, Sophie whispered, just like you did. It was your nickname, Adrian said, because you loved looking at the stars before bedtime. Sophie folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her heart. I have a family. After all these years, I have a family. You always did, Adrian said. We just got lost for a while. 6 months later, Sophie's Light Foundation opened its doors in the grand hall of the Wallace Mansion. Adrian stood at the podium with Sophie and Maria beside him. Behind them hung Sophie's logo design, 2 figures holding hands before a fountain, a single star shining above. This foundation exists because of a promise, Adrian told the assembled crowd. A promise I made to find my sister, and I did, but not alone. Maria kept Sophie's memory alive when no one else believed. And Sophie never gave up hope. Sophie stepped forward. I spent most of my life lost, not knowing who I was or where I belonged. But love never forgot me. My brother who searched for 3 decades, Maria who kept faith in my truth, and my mother who left me a letter reminding me that love waits. This foundation is for every lost child, every broken family. We will find you. We will believe you, and we will bring you home. After the ceremony, the 3 stood together in the garden as stars emerged in the twilight sky. Sophie looked up at them and smiled. I used to wish on stars in the orphanage, she said. I wished for my brother to find me. And he did, Maria said, squeezing her hand. Adrian smiled. We all found each other. Sophie looked at the mansion, the fountain, and the 2 people beside her, one connected by blood, one by love forged in hardship. I'm home, she said, and for the first time in 28 years, the words felt completely true. Inside, beside her childhood portrait, hung a new photograph. 3 adults by the fountain, holding hands, smiling. The past and present, united at last. Because time can erase faces and blur memories, but it can never erase love. Love waits, patient and persistent, through years of separation. And when the Wash finally find their way home, love is there. Exactly where it always was. Exactly where it always will be, waiting. The end. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this story warmed your heart. If this story touched you, subscribe to this channel. Tell us the part that almost had you in tears. We are reading every comment. Bye for now.